Yo, good afternoon, everybody. How you doing? This is your Coach Renz, and today we're going to discuss this topic that I saw on my Facebook feed this morning. In one of the relationships group that I belong to, there was this, and I want you guys to be able to look at this and see this and understand this. Yes, this man recorded how often him and his wife had sex and her reasons for denying him. Now, in recording this, many people in the thread talked about how petty this was and how petty he was. Many people took speculative thought processes and said that, well, he should have been adult and talked to her about it instead of coming at her like this. We take our own pain and implement it into this situation, whereas we have no idea if they had talked about it before, if this would have been an ongoing issue, how long the relationship has been, how long they've been in a relationship. Was there some kind of traumatic event that happened? Is he cheating? Did she cheat? What's going on? There's a lot of variables that could be going on as to why this. The reason why I'm bringing this up here is not so much about whether or not it's petty, but what does it reveal about relationships is why I'm bringing this up. Okay, so without speculation, without thinking about whether he cheated or not, or whether she cheated or not, or is this person, this how they first brought this situation to bear. That's not the point. The point is, by recording this, he demonstrates the facts of their relationship. And that's what I want to key in on, is the facts of this relationship and what may be going on in your relationship, because a lot of people are in denial about the realities of their relationships. And I want you guys to be able to understand that this is not something that this one guy did one time. Let me give you a little bit of information about myself, because I've done this before. I've done this myself. And the reason why I did it was because of past experience. You see, I've been married twice in my life. Now, the first time I got married, I was 19 years old when I got married. Married my high school sweetheart, best friend. I did a video on how to destroy a 17-year relationship. You can go back and watch that one if you want more details on that relationship and how I personally take the responsibility for messing that up. But in going through that experience of a 17-year marriage where the way we sexually expressed ourselves grew differently over the course of our 20s and early 30s, that ended in me wanting a divorce at the age of 36. When you see, when I came out of that relationship, I had a new thought, a new programming. Because see, one of the problems in that relationship is that when I would complain about how often we made love to one another and how often we shared intimate moments and how often we dated and that sort of thing, and how we dated and where we dated, when I complained about that, I had my perspective and she had her perspective. So in my next relationship, I came into the relationship expressing exactly who I am, what I expect, and how I expect to live in a marriage, how I expect to grow and develop and have joy and peace and elation in a marriage based on who I am. And my thought process at 36 years old is that if I expressed all of this to a woman in the beginning, then she will be able to excuse herself, realizing that she is not a good match for me. This was my thought process at 36 years old. So at 36, I met many different women. I dated different women, and one at a time, and I wanted to see how the relationship developed. And many people that I met, I realized that we just weren't a good match for one another. But then I met a woman. And I expressed everything to this woman. I told her exactly who I was and how I ended up being divorced, and what were the catalysts that caused me to be divorced, and how I see my life progressing in the future, and how I see me and my wife living our lives. I saw all of that. I expressed all of that, and I lived it, and she began to live it with me. And when she began to live that with me, after about 6 months of her living that with me, I decided that this was the woman I would marry. I rushed into that marriage. We got married. And we went through premarital counseling. I expressed everything to the premarital counselors as to what my expectations were, how I plan to live my life, who I am. And I expressed that she had answered and demonstrated in the affirmative. And she agreed that she had answered and demonstrated in the affirmative. And so we move into the marriage. But then 3 months into the marriage, 3 months, things began to change. And I watched these things change. But I didn't want to wait. I didn't want to wait for a lot of bad blood to be there. So first I started expressing, I'm noticing this change. Is something going on? Did something happen? No, nothing happened. It's just work. No, nothing happened. I'm just stressed out. They changed some things at work. So now I have to do this or that in order to maintain my job. I said, okay, well, do you understand that in a marriage that you have to maintain certain things in order to maintain the marriage? And then just as many people will say, well, divorce is not an option. Well, no, divorce is always an option because it's a possibility. It's not that I'm looking for divorce to be an option, but it's always a possibility because just like with the job, if you go year after year after year of not maintaining the standard, then eventually you lose the job. And if you go year after year after year without maintaining the standard, you lose the marriage. So marriage needs to be treated just as importantly as the job, you see. That was my expression at the time. And then I decided, you know what? We should go to counseling. So we decided to start going to counseling. 6 months into the marriage, it's time for counseling. When we were at the counselor, I started to bring up the points that I was making about how our sex life and intimate life and dating life is not going exactly the same way it was when we were dating, nor what I expected, nor what I proclaimed that I must have in my life. She decided to say that, no, that's not what I said. No, that's not what I did. Thankfully, the counselor kept notes. Flipped through her notes. Yes, you did. You said those things. That's what you told that man. So here we are now, stuck in this place, and we're going back and forth. Now, I figured that maybe the job was the problem. She never wanted to do that job in the first place. She had been doing it for 16 years of her life. So maybe if I took her out of that job and gave her the opportunity to be able to explore and see what she really wants to do, that will ease things up. Maybe if we moved to a different part of town where there was more vitality, that would ease things up. So over the next year and a half, that was made possible. Once that was made possible, I expected things to change. I brought up conversations about things changing. We took trips. We did different things to make things change, but they remained the same. And after a while, they began to get worse. They began to get worse because I started to stop dating, stop doing those sweet things. I got frustrated and tired because here it is 3-4 years into the marriage and I find myself back in a similar situation I was in before, but I'm not even as happy as I was before. So why should I continue? Why should I continue? So I started expressing the fact that this is not working, that this is the reality of this relationship. And of course, I was told it was not. So I did what this gentleman did. I began to record. And for 6 months in my journals, I wrote codes in my journals to let me know as a reminder as to what occurred that day and the next day. And then after 6 months, we was having a discussion about this marriage, and I presented this because I was saying that this is the beginning of the end of this marriage, and this is part of why this is the beginning of the end of this marriage. And when I presented, not so much in a spreadsheet, but a PowerPoint presentation, when I presented it, it was received indifferent. Because what I showed was that now if you looked at that graph, let me throw it up one more time. If you look at this, if you did the numbers, you will see that out of 28 days, they were intimate. Out of 28 days, only 3 days they were intimate with one another. 3 out of 28. Now my evidence in my situation showed that we were intimate 4 out of 30. Average once a week. Now, when you average once a week, that's 52 times a year. To some people, they may say 52 times a year, that's great that you're having intimate conversation, intimate sexual relation 52 times a year. That's great. 52 out of 365 days a year, you make love. 52 out of 365 days, you make love. Let me say that one more time so that the numbers quantify in your brain. That 52 out of 365 days, you make love. Let me ask you a question. If you went to work 52 out of 365 days, what would happen? If you fed someone 52 out of 365 days, what would happen? If you show consideration and love to your children 52 out of 365 days, what kind of children would you have? If you bathe only 52 out of 365 days out of the year, how would your body and your skin feel? You see, when you quantify these numbers, and I know many people say, well, it shouldn't be a duty. No, it should not be a duty. No one should be obligated. No one should be obligated, nor required. But if you want to maintain the marriage, this is something that you must understand. Because in understanding this, you get to understand the marriage. You see, in every culture, current and ancient, in every culture, the marriage never started with a piece of paper. The marriage never started with somebody giving an announcement of you are now married. The marriage has always started when you are intimate with one another. That's when the marriage starts. So if the marriage starts then, and then the marriage is renewed every time. Most people are of the Abrahamic religion who are probably listening to this, and based on the Abrahamic religions, you are not supposed to deny each other. You are to give to one another, because if you don't, you allow the negative portion. Now you call it the devil, but I call it the negative portions of your brain. You allow negativity to enter your marriage, and when that negativity gets in, that's when adultery happens. That's when anger happens. That's when dissent happens. That's when all these other things begin to happen in your relationship. And guess what? Your relationship begins to die. The vibration of the relationship starts to dwindle. It vibrates slower. And the next thing you know, your relationship is over. Whether it's over literally or it's figuratively. You see, one of the things that she told me after I showed her this information is that, well, I guess, and this is her exact words, well, I guess I'm more like my mother than I thought I guess I'm more like my mother than I thought I am. And this plagued me. Because when we met, I discussed and talked about the fact that I was not fond of her parents' relationship. That their parents' relationship was lacking passion and intensity. It was lacking intimacy. It was lacking love to me. That all that backbiting and smart aleck comments to one another and always being dismissive of one another, that was not the kind of relationship that I was interested in. And if that was going to be her, her mode, of operating, then we should not be together. I expressed that in the first time I met her parents. I expressed that. And here I am with someone who says, I guess I'm more like my mother than I thought I am. Well, that ended the relationship for me that day. On that day, I knew the relationship was over. And within 6 months, I was asking for a divorce. So, because I knew that if that was going to be her mode, then that relationship that I despised was going to be my life. And that would just not do, because I love myself way too much for that. And many people will find themselves stuck in a relationship where that is their life, that they're just getting by, they're just accustomed to that person. And I was just not interested in that being my life. So it ended. Funny thing though, once I announced that I wanted a divorce, once I announced that we were getting a divorce, all of a sudden, she reverted back to the girl that I dated. She reverted back to the one that I had first met. But of course, I no longer trusted that. I could not trust that. That was not for me to allow back into my life. So I still continued with the divorce. The thing about it, and I want to add this to it, you have to understand, and this is some food for thought. I told you that the marriage starts and the intimacy is there, and that intimacy revitalizes the marriage. Jim Rohn, if you don't know who Jim Rohn is, he's a motivational speaker, was motivational, he's passed on from this existence. But one of the things that intrigued me about what he said was that there was a German study that showed that men who receive the more passionate kiss, the more passionate relationship, tend to earn 30% more than the men who don't. When I did deeper study into this, one of the things I found out is that men, whether they want to admit it or not, if they're constantly denied intimacy from their woman that they love, then their self-esteem will start to go down. When their self-esteem goes down, their ability to produce goes down. One of the other things that I discovered, that many men, in order to maintain their manhood, that self-esteem, they begin to either physically or emotionally commit adultery within their relationship. They will find themselves flirting with girls and flirting with women and getting that feel from another woman, or they will literally cheat and have sex with another woman in order to feel their manhood, to fill that gap. Now, that is not all men. Some men are just dogs. Some are just dogs. But that also happens in a woman's world as well. This is not just about a man. It happens in a woman's world as well. But you need to understand that within a relationship, you must recommit that intimacy with one another. You must, and it doesn't always have to be the same thing. We can take a walk together. You see, I was coming home and I would say that, hey, we live downtown Atlanta. Let's go take a walk. Let's walk along, let's go walk the city. Let's go enjoy some peaceful, quiet time with one another. Let's go down to this park that was 8 blocks away and another park that was 2 blocks away. Let's go throw out a blanket and look at the stars. Let's go. But I was constantly denied. When you are constantly denied, you lose your zeal to produce for someone because you don't want to share your fruit with that person. Many women may not understand that, but when a man goes out and he produces fruit, he wants to share. Let me pause it for you. Sorry about that. So men want to share their fruit, but they only want to share it with somebody who is appreciative. And one of the ways men receive appreciation is through intimacy. I know some people won't say they understand that. I know you may say that you're equating money with a woman's body. I'm just telling you how men think. It is not for you to agree or disagree. It's just how most men think. I own a business. I work in my business 10 plus hours a day. I give up a lot for this business. The fruit that it produces is my financial picture. I am not willing to just give that out willy-nilly to anybody. I'm not willing to just share that with anybody. So hopefully you can understand how a woman may not be willing to just share her body willy-nilly with anybody, nor am I willing to share the fruits of what I labor for with anybody. So if you can't understand that, great. If you can't understand it, I can't do much for you. But I want you guys to understand that because it's all about matching up. It's about matching up with one another. When you match up with somebody, it should be somebody who magnifies who you are. You should be able to just be yourself and be a greater version of yourself. And then that greater version of yourself makes that other person extremely happy. Just being your normal self should make the person happy, but being a greater version of yourself makes the person extremely happy, which gives your life more life. Now, if you have to change who you are, you have to, re-augment yourself in order to be with somebody, maybe that's not who you should be with. This is why I'm writing the book, I'm Sorry I'm Late, How to Find Your Divine Soulmate. It's designed for you to understand that by discovering the self and then growing within the self, you then match up with someone who magnifies you. You match up with somebody who has big picture ideas like you have big picture ideas. And there's a lot of details involved in that one, and I'm going to. Okay, so that was an incredibly long break, and I have no idea where I left off. But I'm just gonna go from here. So if this is a little disjointed at this point, I apologize for it. But I don't have time to stop it, listen to the whole thing, or listen to the last part, go back again. And I got other things to do. Because like I said, I labor for 10 plus hours a day for my business. And I'm not willing to just share that with anybody. Now, I know I was saying that we have to be able to match up and match up with the right person. We have to be able to understand who we are. And that's one of the things I've been doing over the last 2 years is really not just I know who I am. I know exactly who I am. But it's my evaluation of the other person that I have to be, I have to have an understanding of. And there was in another group that I manage, a young lady, and she's probably going to see this video because this will be in that group. There's, they talked about how they didn't want to repeat the same hurtful relationships that they've been in before. Sometimes we repeat because we don't know how to choose. It's not that we need to fix ourselves. It's not that we need to change ourselves, but maybe we need to understand how to choose the right type person that fits with us. Because if we keep choosing incorrectly, then we're going to continue to have incorrect relationships. It's just as simple as that. But the answer is simple. The application, not so much. Because people have a tendency to show us who they want us to see. Like I said, I would express everything about who I am, everything about what I like in the person, what I'm looking for, and what one of my friends call my unicorn, because they don't believe that she exists. But I express it. And sometimes people will say, oh, that's who I want to be, so let me try to be it. But it's so far outside themselves, and they're doing it for my benefit, not for their own, that they can't maintain it. And when they can't, then it ends up in a bad situation. You see, the young lady that I was married to, I have no ill feelings towards her. I'm not angry with her. If she called me today and said that she needed something or needed me to do something or asked me for something and it wouldn't injure me, I would be happy to give it to her. I have no problems with that. I have no anger towards her. We could sit down and have a great conversation. I wouldn't have any problems with that, because I recognize that she just didn't know who she was. And it's not based on what I think, it's what she said. She didn't realize who she was. So I don't harbor any anger towards her. But many people pretend, or they think that they want to be something, but unless you only make changes when you want to make those changes for yourself. Don't ever make changes for somebody. Only for you should make changes. And if who you are don't match up with the next person, then walk away. Keep moving. That relationship is not for you. That person is not for you. The hurt that you may feel in this short term will be negated by the hurt you will feel in the long run. So be mindful of your matchups. And that is the purpose of this book that I'm writing. It's really about you discovering your divine self and being able to match up with another person of like divinity. That is the purpose of this book, because I want you to have amazing, great relationships. I don't want you to suffer through. I don't want you to have to make a graph. I don't want you to have to make a spreadsheet. I don't want you to have to track how often you are making love to one another, how often you date, how often you hold hands, how often you go do exciting things. It should come natural. It should just be a thing you do. You guys coming together to renew your vows with one another through the act of intimacy should be a natural thing. And the quantity and the quality of it should be a natural thing that you should never have to ask for, beg for, or be required to do. You should be doing it because you choose to, out of the fact that you enjoy it with this person. You enjoy reigniting that flame with this person. You enjoy communicating that way with this person. That is how it should be. That is what I want you to have and what I want for myself. So because I want it that way, I'm writing this book. Because you deserve to have it that way, I want you to understand and develop as far as who you are and be able to match up and choose correctly. Now that's the last I'm going to say about this today. By the way, one of my employees, she wants me to start doing a relationship and chakra sexual show and she wants me to call it Rens After 10, because it'll be after 10 o'clock when I do it, because that's when I shut down from working. But tell me what you think in the comments. You know, should I do a show called Rens After 10 that's based on relationships and spirituality? If that is something that you guys would like, on YouTube Live, it'll be on YouTube Live. It won't be on Facebook Live. It'll be YouTube Live. If that's something that you would like, because maybe I'll figure out how to simulcast one day, but if that's something that you guys would like to see, please say so in the comments. I look forward to it if that's something that you would like. And other than that, remember, you got to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable.